All right, we are brewing on the Speidel Braumeister Plus. And we're gonna go over everything you need to know about using one of these awesome units.
This is part 2.
In this episode, we're talking about hot side. Not all has to do with the mash and boil. So let's talk about the first thing I love about this system, which is a delayed start. So let's say you want to brew tomorrow or even way later today. You can set it up, add your water, and set it up to start heating later so that when you are ready to brew, it's ready to go.
One of the things that I love about this is, say we did program our mash steps like we did earlier. When it raises, it actually turns off the heating elements a degree below it hitting its temp and lets it rise there. If it doesn't hit its rise, say your ambient's too cold, things like that, it'll turn it back on. So that precision, where other units I've brewed on, they'll overshoot your mash step. So I really enjoyed that about this unit. All right, so we talked about the mash steps. Let's talk about the malt pipe itself. So it's actually pushing water or wort at this point up through the grain bed rather than from the top down. That was just really cool to me, and I think it's more efficient. What do you think about that, Chris?
One, it's very gentle. It's coming up through and then spilling over the sides down to where the elements are. Heating, if it needs heating, the liquid with these ultra low density watt elements that won't scorch, but they heat it up and they're very efficient, as opposed to being a plate that's kind of underneath. It's actually in the liquid, so it doesn't take much heat to change that temperature. And then just constantly recirculating, and I say constantly, it actually doesn't. It has logic programmed into it to help hold you at times to really stabilize the temperature, unlike any other thing. And speaking of stabilizing that temperature, they put the sensor up high, about the middle of the sidewall, so that you actually get a much more accurate reading of what the liquid temperature is in there.
And I think it is worth mentioning, you can put this in manual mode as well and turn a pump on, turn the heating elements on, set the temp that you want it to. So you can run it in manual mode as well.
And I always think I am going to use all the automation on whatever system I'm using, whether it's one of the brew sculptures, whether it's one of the other electric all-in-ones we've used, and almost every single time we go manual. And it's really nice to know you can.
Exactly.
And sometimes automation's great. I've driven in a Tesla car in auto mode. It's really nice to take over in manual. I'm glad that feature still exists.
Yeah. So the first thing you do once you hit the brew, it's going to ask you, is there water in the vessel? And so that's really cool. It won't dry fire on there without that. So you add your water in, it's going to start heating your water. It's going to bring you up to your mash temp. You've already got your malt pipe in there, so now you're ready to go ahead and mash in. So we're brewing on the 10 liter, so we used about 5 pounds of grain. We're just gonna go ahead and simply add it in there. There's, the liquids or the water's in there, your strike water. Stir it in, same thing that you would on any vessel. And then we're gonna close it up with the screen on top. So there's a fine mesh screen and then a slotted screen that goes on top of that. And then there's a little bar that kind of locks it in place and pushes that gasket down against the bottom. And underneath there's the pump, the one that's pushing up through, and then there's on the outside is the intake.
And it's just completely unique, because then all of a sudden you start seeing that water come up. It starts as a pretty thick porridge when you first go in, and then you see the liquid coming up from the bottom, spilling over the top, and you see that constantly recirculating as it's getting up to temperature. What you notice over time too is how quickly it starts to clear out. So the lauter filter works beautifully.
Cool, so depending on how many stages, mash steps you programmed, it's gonna work through those, do the rest at each point, raise the temperature at each point, and then you're ready to sparge. And it actually tells you, you got your audible step and it says, time to lift the mash basket and sparge it.
So similar to other units, it has an ability to lift up the malt pipe, and this one has 2 sets of posts that you use on their little rest to help you first get it up a little bit, drain out, let's say probably half of the mash basket. And then the next one you pull up and it finishes the full drain. Then we just simply ladled water over the top, just like a lot of other EBIBs, just enough to rinse that beautiful sugar out of those grains, and you're ready to go.
Cool, so once we've done our sparge, we're ready to now boil. what we did on this brew day, as soon as we were letting that in, we moved on to the next step. So it just starts heating up ahead of time to start boiling. The cool thing, the one thing that I really loved about this that I discovered on the very first brew day is around 180, it actually said, hey, it didn't say hey, but it said, take off the lid to prevent a boil over. We put our lid on there to help it heat up a little faster, but it actually reminded you of that. And that was really cool. Just those little things like that in the software that I loved.
Yeah, no, the ding is amazing, because how many times have we been sitting there thinking like, oh, we'll know when to check in. All of a sudden you see Kreuzen just dropping all over the place. So it is really nice to have that early warning system. We put the lid back on once we heard it just to help get us up to that boiling temp, 110 units. Usually you want to preserve that heat, but awesome just to get up to the boil that way. And it was pretty quick.
Yeah, got up there pretty quick, and the boil itself, a nice vigorous rolling boil. These elements are doing a great job. Again, like you said, 110, but I guess help this insulation, the lid really got a nice rolling boil in there.
Yeah, and having the coils internal to the liquid and in constant contact with the liquid, I think you're very efficient, not losing any heat that way.
Good point. So again, if you're using the My Speidel platform and you've programmed your recipe in it, it'll tell you, hey, hop addition, yeast nutrient addition, Werflock addition. If you put those all in there, you get the audible beep, you get the stop on the screen. The cool thing is, even though it has a stop on the screen, the timer's still clicking though. So it's timing your whole thing. So again, that precision, it's not just like stop, and if you didn't get to it, it's just gonna not calculate that as part of your boil. So it tells you time to add these hop additions. For us, what we've done, we just threw the hops right in here. So we're not doing like a hop screen or a basket like we've done on some of the other units. And I think the reason I had confidence doing that on the first brew is how beefy this pump is and how big the throat is on those intake and outtake.
Yeah, and on this unit, your takeout is off to the side. So you have that chance to do a whirlpool. You have that chance where some units drain from the bottom, which makes it a little harder to do those.
Yeah, you don't want to get clogged up and have to take about your pump on a brew day. Some of the other things, there's a ton of accessories for these. One of the things, we were talking about the boil right now, but the mash, there is LODO accessory. So that means low dissolved oxygen. So it's a lot of people are into that. So that is one of the accessories that they sell for this.
Yeah, if you're brewing a lot of like continental lagers, something that oxygen staling is really noticeable in, or if you want to really age these competitions, you want that to age for a long time. These are things people are starting to pay attention to, no locks, low locks, malts. If you're really into low oxygen pickup, those are great accessories to add to it.
So that was part 2, where we go over everything on the hot side and brewing on this unit. Stay tuned for part 3, where we go over cooling and cold side. So thanks for watching. You can find the link to the Braumeister below, and make sure you subscribe. See you next time.